This is TWiT.
Google and Passkeys. Last week, Google formally launched their support for Passkeys. I popped onto Jason's Tech News Weekly show last Thursday and spent some time placing this announcement into perspective.
Good. I was hoping. We need your input. Yeah.
We had a great time. I explained, and there's a picture here in the show notes, Leo, how 50 years ago, 50 years ago in 1973, when I was at UC Berkeley, I sat in front of that. I mean, I found the picture of it because I knew exactly what it was.
It's a Hazeltine 2000 dumb terminal, right? That's a dumb terminal. Yeah.
Correct. I logged on to the campus mainframe sitting in front of that Hazeltine 2000 dumb video terminal. You'd hit the break button, which was the second one back from the right, in order to get the attention of the mainframe.
Right.
After which, a few seconds later, it would prompt you for your username and then your password. And if those were both known to the system, you'd be logged in. So my point was that I was making on Jason's show last Thursday is nothing has significantly changed during the intervening 50 years. That was 50 years ago. And, today, 50 years later, every web server and website on the internet prompts for, with, yes, a few notable exceptions, but largely prompts for a username and password, or at least can, then verifies that they're correct. Now, we've gotten much better about protecting the user's password secret using hashing and brute force resistant PBKDFs, which we've had a lot of fun talking about and explaining on the podcast. But servers are still essentially holding and comparing user secrets. And that is what is finally changing with the introduction of WebAuthn. WebAuthn finally moves us from that 50-year-old symmetric secret key model to a modern asymmetric public key model. Under this new model, servers no longer keep secrets. They keep public keys, which allow them and only allow them to verify the signature of a randomly generated challenge that they just freshly sent to someone who's logging on. That Hazeltine 2000 terminal I used 50 years ago was, as we just said, a dumb terminal. So there was no way for it to perform the complex math that's required to answer a cryptographic challenge by signing it with a private key. But none of us are using Hazeltine 2000 terminals anymore. We're all logging into a remote computer with a local computer. So these two quite capable computers that are communicating are able to have a mind-bogglingly complex, heavy math interaction, which we are able to take for granted. So in one sense, last week's news from Google was insignificant because it's not Google who needs to make passkey support available. It's everyone else in the world. And that's the hurdle. Just as with any major change in our industry, this is going to be an extremely slow process. At the same time, Google's announcement was significant in as much as it represents another necessary incremental step in the right direction. But it's going to take a long time for this to become universal, if it even ever is. Think of it like today's one-time passwords. I just checked my OTP Auth app. I have 18 one-time passwords registered. How long ago, Leo, were you and I talking about that one-time password football that was supported by VeriSign?
PayPal. I got mine with PayPal. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was accepted by PayPal. It must have been at least a decade ago.
Ages.
Yet today, very few of the websites I log into offer one-time passwords as an additional authentication option. Those where logon security is most important generally do. But, I use mine
at TOTP. It's the same thing, right?
Right.
Football.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. But I suspect that passkeys will be similar. It's going to take a while. But that said, without any question, the biggest and best news is that we now have an option. We have, an open and modern public key-based means of authenticating users over networks. And 50 years from now, I expect everyone to be using it because, it'll end up being built into servers and it'll just be there and easy to use.
Answer me this, though. This is something I've been kind of trying to figure out. As far as I can tell, the FIDO and WebAuthn and Spec don't have any provisions for exporting or moving your keys, right? And I can understand why that might be a security flaw. But It means that Apple, for instance, with their iCloud key has a lock-in. There's no way I can get it out of Apple and move it to Android, right?
Correct. The only thing you can do is use your iPhone to briefly bridge to a different device and then have it create its own new unique passkey there. So
I've gone to Steve's marvelous site and set up a passkey with my iPhone. But now I want to get an Android phone. So you're saying I could log into Steve's Wonderful Site with my iPhone. Can I then tell Steve's Wonderful Site generate a new passkey and set it up with my Android phone? No, I have to keep my iPhone around to log in, right?
So this is one of the reasons that I focused when I was talking to Jason. You solved this with
Squirrel. I know you did.
Well, I did, but I focused on the back end side with Jason because these user facing sides, they're sort of they're up in the they're up in the air. They're open. For example, it would be possible for you to sign into Steve's Wonderful Site with your iPhone, then tell Steve's Wonderful Site that the next sign in is also from you using a different device. So then your Android could identify itself to Steve's Wonderful Site, and now Steve's Wonderful Site would have two passkeys, each for a different device.
Oh, so there. Okay, I've never seen this.
No,
offered.
and that's my point. Is it's up to it's up
Steve's
to the
Wonderful
UI.
Site has to offer that, right?
Yes.
And one thing we found out, at least initially, was a lot of these sites that claim to be offering passkeys were actually not doing it themselves. They were using a third party.
Yes, which is like, punting and immediately, and we could expect that to change over time. The other thing, the other observation that Jason made was that since Pixel has been creating Android and Google on Pixel phones have been creating passkeys for a while. The moment it got activated, he looked in Google, and there were like all of his different devices were listed with their own individual passkeys.
Yeah, both my my Google Pixel and my Galaxy S23. I guess I seem to dimly remember them saying something about this, but both created passkeys, and they were pre-existing. That's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, that is the model. So I got a tweet from Chris Smith, which was interesting and apropos. He said, "Passkeys: going through the details. Can they be used if I don't own a computer or phone?"
Oh,
does this?
Well, what would you be logging in with?
Well, that threw me. So he said, he said, does this amount to an economic barrier to better security and privacy? And so, that tweet and question caught me by surprise. At first, I thought exactly as you did. How could you be doing anything
if
that
you went
required...
to the library?
Yes.
And a lot of people who don't have their own technology do use technology at libraries. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remembered internet cafes, public libraries, hotel business centers, senior citizen centers, and other such facilities which provide computers and internet connectivity for those who don't have any sort of computer with them. So, Chris, I think, makes a point. As I noted above, the biggest change brought by passkeys to the traditional username and password model is the presumption that the user's end of the link will have powerful crypto math capabilities. while any PC on the internet will have that capability, even an internet cafe machine, Passkeys' other requirement is the ability to store any number of individual public key pairs, one pair for every passkey association that the user has ever made to individual websites. And that's not going to be something that someone logging on to a machine in any sort of shared cafe or library setting will have. Now,
won't there always be a password fallback, though, or do you think at some point?
Yes, there will always be, which actually it creates the weak link, right? I mean, we've often talked about the weakest link being the one that gets you.
Right.
Well, if you still actually have usernames and passwords, then site breaches will still be leaking your password.
Well, I guess the presumption is that any new site, I'm going to create a passkey, I won't have a password on that site, right?
If they let you,
they may
not
say
have a
fallback.
backup.
Yeah. Oh God, I bet they will too, because they don't want to field customer support calls.
Exactly.
Lord. Oh, this is a mess.
It is a mess. So that brought me to the question of a personal FIDO dongle. Because this user might not have a phone or a computer, but what about a dongle? But it's unclear, I think, what the future of hardware dongles is now. After they essentially failed to achieve market-critical mass traction, and the FIDO Alliance finally deigned to soften authenticator requirements to allow smartphones and PCs to qualify as sufficiently secure hardware authenticators. It seems to me that this dramatically reduces, if not almost eliminates, the pressure to purchase a separate freestanding dongle for most use cases. There could still be exceptional enforcement of the requirement for a separate freestanding authenticator, in selected ultra-high security applications. But we already know that's not going to be the norm. I have a smartphone. Why do I want to purchase and carry a redundant dongle? I don't, and I won't. Again, some users might want that, but that can now be expected to become much less common. And if that's the case, then what of longer-term support for dongle authenticator logon? It's unclear that hardware authenticator support will automatically be added to websites as passkey support is added. After all, if almost no one is carrying them around, why clutter up and further confuse the user's experience with a rarely used and largely redundant option?
Well, and as Google pointed out, they're going to support this in their advanced protection program, Passkeys.
Right. Right.
So that, although when I log into my my Google Passkeys thing, my YubiKeys are there too.
Right.
But that's because I have YubiKeys,
Exactly. And who's going to be buying a YubiKey when you can use your phone?
I feel bad for Stina, really.
So apparently they cashed out. So I think she's just fine.
Yeah, I saw she stepped out or up.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about password managers? That puts them out of business too, right?
Well, password managers will still be the holders of our usernames and passwords, and there's nothing to prevent a password manager from being your passkey holder.
Well, do I want to do that? I mean,
I agree. It's
1Password
not
says they're planning to do that.
I know,
and
what it does solve is the cross ecosystem problem, right? Because the password manager won't care if you're Apple or Google. I mean, it'll be a third-party password manager.
But it's not a hardware enclave; it's software.
Nope.
Which makes it less secure.
Yeah, exactly. I think that on balance, Chris's point is valid. This move to higher security authentication does require some form of dedicated per-user authenticator capable of storing all of the user's public passkey pairs and negotiating with remote websites for their use. I cannot see any way for a shared PC-only usage model to accommodate that. So it's good news that username and passwords will never go away, and users who are unable to own their own authentication device will need to operate without the benefit of public key crypto authentication. Okay, now, I just said that I could not see any way for public key logon to be made practical. But that's not completely true. Not to belabor the point, but this highlights another example of what Squirrel's design got right and the FIDO Alliance got wrong. I'll explain, not from a position of sour grapes. That ship has not only sailed, but sank. But only to highlight that other and arguably...
You're going to make me cry.
Well, wait till you hear this and you're going to cry. I want to highlight that other and arguably superior solutions are possible. In a Squirrel world, the internet cafe or library shared PC user could simply carry their single lifetime Squirrel identity printed on a 1-inch square QR code. They could have it, plastic laminated for longevity. That's all they would need.
So that's their private key, basically, in a QR code.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's a universal private key instead of needing
one per.
One per everything.
That's a lot of keys. Yeah.
So they sit down in front of a shared PC, which is configured to reboot after use and to never make any permanent changes, as all of those, cafe-style machines are. The user would click the Squirrel icon, hold their QR code up to the PC's camera, and import their globally unique identity into Squirrel. After then entering their one single password, which is used to decrypt their Squirrel identity, from that point on, every site they visit would be able to obtain their per-site anonymous identity for logon.
That's so cool. So much better.
So, unfortunately, unlike Squirrel, Passkeys operation requires potentially unlimited storage of individual public key pairs. So, that rules out its use by any user who cannot provide some form of personal public key pair storage.
It's like they started that process at UStart when that light bulb went on 7 years ago, but they didn't finish it. They didn't think it all the way through. Because there's no reason why they couldn't have done it better, to me.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's very frustrating.
I solved it all the way out.
Yeah.
All the, all the possibilities.
All the edge cases through, and that's the thing.
For example, say that the guy who sat down for some reason wants to appear as a different user, but he only has his one QR code. Well, there's a provision in the Squirrel spec to allow you to append something to your identity to create a branch identity just for that one time.
We want that too. Yeah,
I know.
This got support. Somebody's saying in the IRC dry heat. Seems obvious they wanted the smartphone to be the authenticator. If you think at who was behind this, Google, Apple, Microsoft too, but Google and Apple did have a dog in that hunt. They want a hardware enclave that you buy from them. Plus, the lock-in really bothers me. You cannot.
Yeah.
You're locked into that platform. I mean, Apple makes it possible to go to a new iPhone, but not to an Android.
The whole model is create another identity. Create another key pair. So it just doesn't transport the way we would like it to.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.